Meanwhile, across town, Tom shook Dan awake. "It's time," he whispered. Dan groaned. "I hate sleeping in a car. My neck's all stiff." "Better stiff than 6 feet under," Tom replied sharply. "I still don't get how she survived. And then somehow she got her stuff again? It's spooky. Maybe it's not her. Maybe a sister." "No. She was an only child," Tom said. "We'll find out soon." "I saw the bedroom light go out. She'll be asleep soon. Then we'll deal with this." Back at the house, Phoebe nestled deeper into the clean sheets. The comfort of the nightgown, the warmth of the bed, it felt like peace, something she hadn't known in a long time. She glanced once more at the can. Then, she turned off the light, closed her eyes, and slept. Phoebe never heard the window creak open. She jolted awake in the dark as 2 figures grabbed her by the sheets, pinning her before she could move. A light flicked on. 2 men loomed over her. "It's her." "You were right," one whispered. "Shut up," hissed the other. "Never use names." Well, if she's not going to be talking to anyone ever again. Phoebe's heart raced. She had to act fast. She scanned the room and spotted the can of spray still on her nightstand. She remembered an old lesson from her martial arts instructor. Anything can be a weapon. "I'm a witch," she said sharply, voice cold and filled with fire. The men hesitated. The moment of doubt was all she needed. She twisted her arm free, grabbed the can, and sprayed it directly into their eyes. Both stumbled back, shouting and rubbing their faces. Phoebe jumped from the bed, flinging the blanket aside. As the men tried to recover, she moved quickly, landing a swift, powerful kick that sent one sprawling. The second charged, but she spun into him, slamming her elbow into his chest before delivering a sharp kick that knocked him down. Panting, she looked at the 2 unconscious men. What now? Calling the police might complicate everything, especially while she was still adjusting to this new identity. Then her eyes landed on the spray. If it changed her, could it change them too? When Tom awoke hours later, he felt wrong. His body was unfamiliar. The clothing he wore, soft, small, and strange, clung awkwardly. As he sat up, everything felt off. Dan groaned nearby. "What happened?" Tom looked at Dan, but where his partner should have been, he saw a small girl in a pink dress, dazed and confused. Dan, looking down at his own unfamiliar body, let out a gasp. "This isn't possible." From the doorway came a calm, amused voice. "Well, you're awake," Phoebe said, arms crossed. They turned toward her. "So," she continued with a smirk, "what were your names again?" "I'm Dan, and that's Tom," the smaller one muttered. Phoebe shook her head. "I don't think so. I think Tammy and Danielle suit you better now." Danielle blinked. What did you do to us?" "Oh, just a bit of poetic justice," Phoebe said. "I warned you, I'm a witch." "Change us back," Tammy shouted, trying to sound commanding but failing with the high, trembling voice. Phoebe ignored her tone. "You tried to end my life twice. I figured giving you a second chance might be enlightening." The 2 stared at each other, unsure whether to believe her or not. "I have a proposition," Phoebe said. "You stay here. I tell everyone you're my long-lost nieces. You grow up, maybe turn over a new leaf. When I claim my inheritance tomorrow, you'll be under my care. And if we say no?" Danielle asked softly. "Then I call the authorities. You'll be taken in, and who knows where you'll end up." Also, she leaned closer, her voice dropping. "The spell might not be stable if I'm not around. I wouldn't recommend testing that." The 2 hesitated. Then Tammy sighed. "We don't have a choice, do we?" Phoebe raised an eyebrow. "Not if you want to survive." Tammy and Danielle glanced at one another, lost, confused, but no longer resisting. "One more thing," Phoebe said, her tone hardening. "Who hired you?" Tammy looked away. Danielle answered first. "It was your uncle. He stood to inherit everything if your family didn't show up. He planned it all, starting with your parents." Phoebe nodded grimly. I thought so. Later, she left them with bedding and clothes, choosing to lock the door for their safety as much as her own. Get some rest, she said. Tomorrow, everything changes for all of us. She closed the door, leaving the two former men to their thoughts. Tammy and Danielle sat silently, adjusting awkwardly to their new forms, the weight of their actions and their futures settling over them. Tammy and Danielle settled in for the night under their blankets. They had chosen something comfortable from the wardrobe Phoebe provided, and now lay side by side, whispering quietly before drifting off to sleep. Meanwhile, Phoebe couldn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table flipping through an old phone book, determined to learn more about the strange spray that had changed her life. She turned the mysterious can under the table lamp, trying to read the faded label. She could just barely make out what looked like Ugglebug Company. Guessing it might begin with an H, she scanned through the business listings, and there it was, Hugglebug Company. She jotted down the number and decided she'd call them first thing in the morning. With that, she finally turned in for the night. Morning came quickly. Phoebe woke with a start, briefly confused about where she was until the sensation of soft fabric and the light streaming through the window reminded her of the previous day's events. Her heart sank for a moment, but then steadied. This was real. This was her life now. She quietly checked on the two girls, finding them still asleep. Satisfied, she took a quick shower and dressed for the day. She chose a clean white blouse and a tailored jacket, something professional and mature for the legal hearing ahead. Drying her hair with a blow dryer, she selected a few accessories, a necklace, a bracelet, and a small locket that held photos of her parents. For makeup, she kept it simple. Just a touch of lipstick. The rest could wait until she felt more confident. In the kitchen, she prepared a light breakfast and was just finishing when Tammy and Danielle wandered out, dressed in mismatched outfits and looking groggy. Phoebe smiled gently. You'll get the hang of it eventually, she said, helping them climb into chairs and pouring them bowls of cereal. The girls began bickering almost immediately. Hey, Phoebe interrupted. No arguing. Either work together or eat separately. The threat of losing breakfast was enough to quiet them. She left them to finish while she returned to the phone to make her call. The Hugglebug Company receptionist answered politely. Phoebe explained that she had found one of their old spray cans and wanted to know more about its contents. After being transferred, a representative asked for the can's serial number, which Phoebe read aloud from under the lid. A pause. That can was part of an old batch, clothing adaptive nanites, the woman finally said. They were designed to adjust fabric fit for comfort and appearance. Nothing more. Phoebe hesitated. Could it do more? Like, copy someone else? No. Not unless there was DNA data involved, like a blood sample. Phoebe's heart skipped. The blood on those clothes. The woman warned that the can had been sold 2 years ago and should not be used anymore. If it was exposed to weather or extreme temperatures, the nanites might have mutated. It's unpredictable and unsafe. Phoebe pressed for more, but the representative refused to disclose the original owner. Eventually, she agreed to pass Phoebe's contact info along if the original recipient agreed to speak. Phoebe hung up, feeling a mix of hope and dread. Back in the kitchen, the girls had finished breakfast and were arguing again. Enough, she said firmly. If you two can't work together, maybe I should call the orphanage. Both girls froze. Before she could add more, the phone rang. Hello, she said, picking it up. A calm voice replied, Hi, this is Michelle. I heard you found a can of HB spray, the one we tossed a while ago. Phoebe blinked in surprise. Wow, that was fast. The company called me right after your inquiry. I figured I should call you directly, it sounded urgent. Phoebe hesitated. I did use the spray. I just wanted to understand it better. Michelle didn't press. It was the clothing fit formula, right? It was designed to last only 3 days. How long has it been? Phoebe swallowed hard. This is day 3. Silence. I see, Michelle said carefully. Is something wrong? Phoebe struggled to find words. Her voice caught. It's not something I can explain over the phone. Hearing the emotion in her voice, Michelle softened. Why don't I come by? We can talk in person. Phoebe paused, then gave her the address. Michelle's voice came through the phone, calm and reassuring. I live in Celeron, just 5 minutes away. I'll be right over. A short while later, Phoebe opened the door to find a poised woman in a pale lavender dress standing outside. Phoebe found herself admiring the look. Would I ever feel that confident in something like that? The thought caught her off guard. Her emotions swelled again at the idea that this new life might be fleeting. Without hesitation, Michelle stepped forward and gave her a comforting hug. Phoebe didn't resist. After exchanging brief introductions with Tammy and Danielle, Michelle guided Phoebe into the bedroom for privacy. Once Phoebe opened up about everything, her transformation, the inheritance, and the danger from her uncle, Michelle listened intently, occasionally shaking her head in disbelief. It sounds like the nanites mutated, Michelle finally said. They may have absorbed DNA from the clothing and rewritten your physical structure. If you haven't seen any signs of reverting, this could be permanent. Phoebe brightened. You really think so? Well, my husband once stayed transformed longer than expected. It was a strange time for both of us. But it was reversible, eventually. You'll just have to wait and see. You and your husband? Phoebe asked, puzzled. Michelle smiled faintly. That's a story for another day. The short version, we'd wanted children for a long time. The spray helped, temporarily. They both chuckled lightly. Phoebe looked down. What about the 2 girls out there? You think you could handle them while I go see the lawyer? Michelle nodded. Sure. You focus on what's ahead. I'll keep them entertained and fed. Who knows? Maybe there's something redemptive in them after all. Just as she said it, the sound of banging and raised voices came from the hallway. Phoebe and Michelle rushed out to find the girls frustrated and upset. They were in tears, overwhelmed, confused, and struggling to adjust to their new lives. Michelle instinctively knelt and embraced them, comforting them with quiet kindness. Phoebe stood back and watched, touched by Michelle's gentle strength. Later, while the girls watched TV in the living room, Michelle helped Phoebe get ready. The suit's great, but let's add a bit of polish. She helped Phoebe apply subtle makeup, lipstick, a touch of blush, and light eyeshadow. Phoebe listened carefully, her hands trembling slightly. It was her first lesson in looking like the woman she now appeared to be. When she looked in the mirror, she was stunned. Beautiful, Michelle said. Phoebe's smile was faint, but genuine. Thank you. She hugged Michelle tightly, then grabbed her purse and keys. Her old Buick waited in the garage. 15 minutes later, Phoebe sat in a stately office paneled in dark wood. Behind the desk was a sharp-looking man who rose to greet her. Phoebe Wilson, he said warmly. A pleasure to finally meet you. I'm John Thompson, your family's attorney. Phoebe shook his hand, trying not to show how nervous she was. We do have another party contesting the inheritance, he said. But you are the direct descendant. As long as your documentation checks out, there's no issue. Phoebe nodded. Here are my documents. She handed him the license and birth certificate she had prepared. One more thing, he said, sliding a paper and ink pad toward her. We'll need fingerprints, just a formality. Phoebe froze for a second. What if they compare these to my old ones? But there was no going back now. She pressed her fingers into the ink and onto the paper. After that, John led her to a larger conference room. 3 men were seated there already. Phoebe scanned them, searching for any sign of her uncle. Her eyes paused on one, a tall man in a tailored suit, with eyes that flicked toward her and quickly looked away. She sensed something. A flicker of guilt? Fear? She held her head high and took her seat. This was it. John politely pulled out a chair for Phoebe. Remembering Michelle's guidance, she gracefully swept her dress under her as she sat and offered a small, appreciative smile. John took his seat beside her and nodded to the man across the table. "We'll begin," the estate executor announced, by stating that the assets in question, both monetary and property, are to be transferred to the direct descendants of the late Katherine Johnson. The estate totals approximately $20 million. He glanced between Phoebe and the man seated across from her. Now, with the recent and tragic passing of Catherine's daughter and son-in-law, the sole remaining heir is— "I object." The man stood abruptly. "That's not Phoebe Wilson. I demand proof. No child just walks in here and takes everything." "Sir, please calm down," the executor said, slightly startled. "You will have an opportunity to speak, but we must proceed in order." John spoke next. "We anticipated your concern and took Phoebe's fingerprints prior to this meeting. I also contacted a colleague in the police department who has access to records submitted by Miss Wilson during a prior burglary investigation." He opened the door. A composed, authoritative man stepped in. "Sergeant Kowalski," he said, introducing himself. After comparing the two sets of fingerprints, he turned to the room. "They match. No discrepancies." Then, with a smile, he added, "Congratulations, Miss Wilson." Phoebe blushed, murmuring a quiet thank you. She dared a glance toward the man across the table, her uncle. The look in his eyes was unmistakable, fury and frustration barely masked behind a cold expression. The executor continued, sliding a folder forward. "Miss Wilson, if you'll sign here and here, we'll finalize everything." Phoebe signed her name slowly, trying to keep her hand from shaking. The executor handed her a ring of keys. "You may visit the property at any time. There is also a significant amount in the bank, and your shares are actively generating income." John added, "I'll handle all legal documentation and taxes on your behalf. If you'd like to grant me power of attorney, I'll manage the financial transfers smoothly." Nodding, Phoebe signed a few more forms, still slightly dazed by how easily it all happened. Outside, John offered her a drink to celebrate. "I'll pass," she smiled. "I've got a long drive ahead, and I think my nerves are overstimulated already." "Understandable. Call me if you need anything." Phoebe got into her car, feeling the weight of what had just happened. But as she pulled out of the parking lot, her gaze caught a glimpse of a black car in the rearview mirror. Its tinted windows and cautious distance made her uneasy. She drove aimlessly for a while, taking turns at random to see if it followed. It did. Only as she neared her neighborhood did the car finally slow and turn away. A chill ran through her. When she pulled into the driveway, Michelle was already at the door, her face filled with anticipation. "Well?" she asked. "I'm rich," Phoebe said simply, wrapping her arms around her. Michelle laughed and hugged her back. "That's wonderful. But you don't look relieved." "I was followed. I don't think it's safe here anymore." Michelle's face sobered. "Then pack a few things and come stay with us for now. We've got room, and no one will think to look for you there." Phoebe nodded. "Let's do it." They packed quickly, clothes, documents, essentials. Phoebe grabbed the spray can too, holding it reverently. "This thing saved my life, twice." She could still feel liquid sloshing inside. Michelle drove the long way home, taking detours and checking her mirrors. Finally, they arrived and slipped through the garage into the safety of the house. While Tammy and Danielle explored the living room, Phoebe and Michelle sat in the kitchen over coffee, planning next steps. The front door opened. Phoebe jumped, heart pounding, until Michelle smiled. "That's just Bill." He entered the room, paused at the sight of unfamiliar faces, and raised an eyebrow. Phoebe noticed how kind his eyes were, curious, but not invasive. Michelle made introductions and then, over coffee, told him everything. Bill listened, absorbing each twist in the story. When Michelle mentioned Phoebe's transformation, he looked surprised, but didn't recoil. Instead, his expression shifted to one of concern. You should have gone to the police, he said, frowning. Even with little evidence, someone needed to know. She's been through a lot, Michelle said gently. She's still figuring out who she is and what comes next. You're right, Bill sighed. I'm just worried for both of you. And those two girls. This whole thing could have ended very differently. Then, looking back at Phoebe, he added with a supportive smile, You've done well. You've survived, and that's no small feat. We need a plan, dear, Michelle said thoughtfully, to help Phoebe deal with her uncle. Well, Bill replied, I'm not too busy at work. I could take a day off and drive Phoebe out to Lakewood to check out the estate. It'll be safer than her going alone. Michelle smiled and gave him a hug. That makes me feel better. I'll stay here and look after our two girls. Maybe I can start teaching them a few things they'll need later in life. Already mothering them? Bill laughed. All right, sounds like a plan. Now, what's for dinner? I'm starving. Michelle gave Phoebe a mock-exasperated glance, one of those wordless exchanges women share, and Phoebe, to her own surprise, found herself grinning in return. There was something oddly comforting about the inclusion, like she had joined a sisterhood she never knew she needed. The two women moved into the kitchen to prepare something light. As they worked, they chatted about Phoebe's new inheritance and wondered what the Lakewood property would be like, whether it might feel like home, or just another chapter to close.